the hidden black nation inside the swamp. They called it the Great Dismal Swamp, a name meant to scare you, a place where snakes ruled the water, where the air itself seemed alive with mosquitoes, and where white men saw only darkness and danger. But for tens of thousands of black people, this dismal swamp was something else entirely. It was a nation, a kingdom of freedom built inside America's greatest nightmare. Welcome to My Blackness 100, channel dedicated to sharing Black empowerment and Black excellence. Like, share, comment, and hit the notification button for more Black excellence and Black empowering stories. Today, we're journeying deep into the heart of Black American resistance, into a place so wild, so untamed, that it became one of the greatest symbols of Black freedom and resilience in the Western Hemisphere. This is the story of the Maroons of the Great Dismal Swamp, the refuge no one expected. Hundreds of years ago, this wetland, roughly the size of Delaware, stretched from southeastern Virginia down into North Carolina. To most, it was death, but to those who'd escaped slavery, it was deliverance. The swamp became home to Maroons, enslaved Africans and their descendants who refused to live on anyone's plantation. They didn't just run away. They built a civilization, hidden communities that stood strong for more than 250 years right in the middle of the South, the very heart of American slavery. These weren't isolated people barely surviving. They created families, economies, and systems of defense. In a world that claimed Black people couldn't survive without white masters, the Maroons proved the opposite. They thrived beyond the reach of any slave owner. But how did this begin? In the early 1700s, colonial Virginia was a land of brutality. Both Black and white laborers suffered under the whip, and many fled in search of freedom. Some of those early runaways found their way to the swamps, often guided by indigenous tribes like the Algonquin-speaking peoples, who had lived near these wetlands for thousands of years before being pushed off their lands by colonists. The first recorded wave of Maroons came after the Chesapeake Rebellion of 1730. A rumor spread that King George II had granted freedom to any enslaved person who'd been baptized. When that freedom was denied, hundreds revolted. The uprising failed, but around 200 enslaved people escaped into the Great Dismal Swamp, never to return to chains again. What awaited them wasn't mercy, it was survival. According to Harriet Jacobs, a woman who fled to the swamp to escape sexual violence, the danger was constant. As night fell, snakes slithered through the reeds so thick she had to beat them away with sticks. But she still wrote that the swamp was less dreadful than the white men who called themselves civilized. Those who pressed deeper became what historians now call interior Maroons. They built settlements on small islands, more than 200 of them, using fallen trees for homes, planting corn, beans, and rice. They hunted deer, trapped wild hogs, and gathered berries and roots. They raised children in freedom, something most enslaved Africans could only dream of. Their cabins stood hidden among cypress trees, smoke rising just enough to cook, but not enough to be seen. They traded honey and wax for tools, fished for sustenance, and shared everything. These communities weren't chaotic. They were organized, cooperative, and fiercely protective. They welcomed new members cautiously, sometimes watching for weeks before allowing anyone to join. For generations, they kept their freedom alive through secrecy, self-reliance, and unity with nature. and their existence terrified the slave-owning world. The fear of the free. William Byrd II, a wealthy Virginia landowner, once tried to explore the swamp. His men couldn't make it more than 1.5 miles per day. They sank into the bog, shredded by thorns, swarmed by insects, and choked by the thick air. After 8 days, they gave up, humiliated and hungry. Colonial officials whispered warnings. If the Maroons were left alone, they could become a powerful army capable of toppling slavery. They weren't wrong, because freedom is contagious, and every enslaved person who heard stories of those hidden communities began to dream bigger, began to plan. Frontier of freedom. Not all Maroons lived deep inside the swamp. The Fringe Maroons built lives on the outer edges, closer to plantations and towns. They stayed near to visit loved ones, trade, or even coordinate escape routes for others. One woman escaped with her 2 children, while her husband remained enslaved nearby, secretly supporting them with stolen goods and information. Families separated by slavery found ways to communicate through codes. A shirt hung on a fence might mean it's safe to move. A song sung a certain way could warn of patrols. Some Maroons disappeared into the swamp for months, some for years. Some came only to rest, to heal from wounds, to regain strength, and to reclaim their humanity before returning to fight another day. By the early 1800s, the swamp had also become a station on the Underground Railroad. For thousands fleeing north, it was a refuge, a breath of freedom on the long road to liberation. The Canal Maroons. In 1763, greed came for the swamp. The Dismal Swamp Canal Company was founded by 12 wealthy men, among them George Washington himself. Their dream? Drain the swamp, harvest its timber, and make profit off the backs of enslaved laborers. But the swamp had other plans. The canal was finished in 1805, built entirely by enslaved Africans. Yet in secret, those workers cooperated with the Maroons. They traded food, tools, and knowledge. Some even escaped to join them permanently. These were the Canal Maroons, men and women who used their labor for white masters as cover while building black freedom networks underground. Some shingle-getters, as they were called, produced 2 or 3 times their quota, splitting the profit with overseers who pretended not to notice. It was rebellion in plain sight, black ingenuity turning oppression into opportunity. Venus and Jack, a couple enslaved near the canal, tried to escape 3 times. The third time, they vanished into the swamp together and stayed free. Their love, their defiance, became a legend whispered along the canal's edge. Rebellion in the shadows. Freedom alone wasn't enough for some. They wanted to destroy the system that enslaved La people. Across the Americas, enslaved Africans led more than 250 revolts, and the Great Dismal Swamp played its part. In 1802, plans spread for a massive uprising known as the Easter Conspiracy. The message was clear: our tyrants shall soon be taught lessons by our resentment that humility has never taught them. The rebellion aimed to rise on June 10th to kill slaveholders and claim freedom once and for all. But the plan leaked. Dozens were captured, executed, or exiled. Among them was a man named Tom Copper, a Maroon and a leader of the conspiracy. He was captured, but one night 6 black men rode into town, stormed the jail, and freed him. 4 were caught. 2 escaped. Tom Copper was never seen again. His name faded from the records, but not from the spirit of resistance that ran through the swamp. The end of the Swamp Nation. When the Civil War broke out, the world the Maroons had built began to dissolve. Union soldiers moved south and slavery's walls finally cracked. Archaeologists have found traces of Maroon settlements dating up to 1865, the year freedom was declared nationwide. One report tells of an old man, said to be over 80 years, his hair white as snow, emerging from the swamp for the first time in decades. He said, "Now that I have lived to see the freedom of my race and to know that I am a free man, I am ready to quit this world and go up yonder." His words echo the soul of every Maroon who lived, fought, and died for freedom, not just for themselves, but for generations they'd never meet. The legacy of the Maroons.
Maroons existed wherever slavery existed – in Jamaica, Suriname, Brazil, Haiti, and here in the heart of America. They remind us that freedom wasn't given, it was taken. These weren't superheroes. They were ordinary men and women, builders, hunters, mothers, fathers, who believed their dignity mattered more than any man's law. They created economies, cultures, and families independent of the slave system. And their story lives on in every movement that came after, from the Underground Railroad to the Civil Rights Movement, from Black Power to Black Lives Matter. Wherever chains exist, there will always be people ready to break them. Wherever injustice lives, there will always be Maroons, in spirit if not in name. The Great Dismal Swamp wasn't just a hiding place. It was a living declaration that Black freedom cannot be contained. It was a nation born in mud and mosquitoes, built on courage and conviction. It was proof that even in the darkest corners of history, Black brilliance found a way to shine. If this story moved you, if you believe these hidden chapters of our history deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and drop a comment saying, "I honor the Maroons." This is My Blackness 100, where we reclaim the stories that built our strength. Like, share, comment, and hit the notification button for more Black excellence and Black empowering stories. Because our past isn't dismal, it's divine. Deep within the Great Dismal Swamp, a vast wetland stretching across Virginia and North Carolina, thousands of enslaved Africans built one of the most powerful symbols of freedom in American history. For over 250 years, these men, women, and children, known as Maroons, created hidden Black settlements, raised families, and resisted slavery from within one of the most feared landscapes on the East Coast.